Hola gente, ¿cómo están? Seguidores, seguidoras del grupo Grite, otro encuentro más, otro invitado de lujo, hoy nada más ni nada menos que Brian Hodge, un escritor que comenzó su carrera a finales de los 80, vivió todo el boom de los paperbacks from hell, vivió todo ese boom de los libros de terror de la época y afortunadamente sobrevivió y aún hoy sigue escribiendo literatura de primerísima calidad, ahora un poco más enfocada a crime fiction que terror, pero afortunadamente sigue escribiendo historia de terror y esperemos que vuelva a la literatura de terror, también le preguntaremos eso. Welcome, Brian Hodge, a this meeting.
Thank you.
Fernando, make a small review of your past about
Mhm.
your beginnings in the 80s
Mhm.
and your tendency to write a horror, a supernatural horror, and nowadays much more crime fiction, and wondering or hoping that you come back to our genre, the horror.
Well,
So,
I only did two crime novels. So,
yeah,
out of 20 books, I guess only two are the crime novels.
all right, great.
Well, my first question. Tu primera novela fue Dark Advent, una muy buena novela de terror que tiene un tono apocalíptico, tiene múltiples personajes y continúa bastante el espíritu de la época en la que fue escrita, a finales de los 80, en donde se tendía a hacer ese tipo de novelas largas con muchos personajes. Más allá de que es una novela increíble, realmente muy, muy buena, la recomiendo muchísimo. Mi pregunta es, ¿esa novela, Dark Advent, la escribiste siguiendo el espíritu de la época, pensando un poco también lo que las casas editoriales querían publicar, o fue realmente lo que de verdad querías escribir en ese momento?
Um, Fernando asked that your first novel, Dark Advent,
Mhm.
is an apocalyptic narrative with a broad cast of characters,
Mhm.
very much in dialogue with the end of the war fiction of the
Mhm.
early 80s. To what extent was the novel shaped by the literary climate of publishing expectation of the period, and to what extent was it simply the story you felt compelled to tell?
Well, one misperception is that it was my first novel, but it was the first one that was released. It was the second one written and the second one sold. And my first one, which came out about 6 months later, was Oasis. So the publishing schedules flip-flopped. But yeah, obviously it fits in with the same genre as The Stand and King's The Stand and Swan Song and for me, Lucifer's Hammer, which is considered really, I guess, more of a science fiction novel. But the roots of it lie in a dream that I had when I was in college about being the one of the final few survivors of some sort of catastrophe that the dream wasn't um, considerate enough to tell me what had actually happened. It was just, here I was in this in this depopulated world that was falling apart. And so I wrote it up as a maybe a 30-page novella, 35 pages or so. And then I later on I felt like that was just the germ of it. I really wanted to expand it even when I was in college, and it was something that really would have been well beyond me. But then I read The Stand and went through a period of depression when I realized this was the novel that I would love to have written, and somebody else beat me to it. So a few years later, after I'd done the first novel, Oasis, what to do next, broaden the scale it up, make it bigger. So I came back to that idea, and it just wouldn't leave me alone. So I went ahead and wrote what was in my heart and what I was really feeling that I wanted to do next, and it was, to me, surprisingly well received, and didn't I didn't see a lot of negative comparisons to the King and McCammon and Niven and Pornell books.
Good, good.
Con respecto a Dark Advent, una pregunta que nos surge es mirando la portada original de la novela. En la portada tiene un demonio rojo, bien de la época, un demonio rojo, y dentro de su boca hay una nenita rubia chiquitita gritando. Nada de eso pasa en la novela. Entonces la pregunta es, que es una pregunta que le hacemos varias veces a los escritores de terror, es cuánto peso tiene sus decisiones al momento de elegir portadas, al momento del diseño de las portadas de sus libros.
This is almost a customary question for all our interviewers, because in the original cover of Dark Advent depicts a red demon and a screaming blonde girl, imagery that bears little relation to the actual story.
Nope.
There is no relation. How much influence have you typically had over the visual presentation of your books? And how do you feel about the tension between marketing, imagery, and narrative truth?
Yeah, with that red devil, that red demon cover and the screaming children through his teeth, it was, I always suspected that was maybe some cover that they had for some other book that was unused. And so they put it on this one. Yeah, I was taken aback by the fact that it had nothing to do with the story itself, this original edition, that it was yeah, nothing that I really had any right at that stage to object to. And the positive thing for that is that, well, when I received the cover flats, just the flat print out of the cover and no book inside it, I took it and took it to bookshelves and bookstores and paperback racks and like Walmart and places like that, and tried it on the shelves, and it really jumped out. My thought was that it did just about everything but jump out and bite you for attention. So that really worked. It had something like an 83% sell through, which is almost unheard of for paperbacks. So it's, if you sell 50% of the print run, you're doing good. But this hit in the 80s. So I think that cover really grabbed people's attention. On from that, I had a number of books come out through Bantam Doubleday Dell, and I really was happy with the covers for that. I didn't have any complaints about them, and I liked their philosophy of what they were doing there, as far as the art direction, because they were wanted to get covers that didn't look like anything else that was out on the market. And so they tapped a bunch of art students at some college or a university there in New York. So that to me was a successful experiment in coming up with something that looked really really unique and carved its own identity. It's the small press books that I've had, like mostly the collections, that I've had more influence on what goes into the cover. There's an artist that I've worked with several times in England called his name is Vincent Chong, and it's always well, the newest one that came out several months ago, the collection Black Hole Sundown. He did the cover for that, and I just kind of try to inject myself as little as possible. I'll give a mood or a color that I see, but I don't try to micromanage it at all because I figure invariably the artist is going to come up with something better than I would. So that's always been a happy association working with him. I've never felt that much of a conflict between the marketing side of things and the creative side of things, because ultimately the cover has a job to do. It's to grab people's attention and to get them to look at the first page. So publishers tend to know what works and what doesn't.
Yes, if they nail it, keep going.
Yeah.
All right.
Efectivamente, las portadas siguientes fueron much better, much tasteful que esa primera portada. De hecho, Oasis tiene una muy linda portada, a nice cover, the novel Oasis. My question about Oasis es una novela muy diferente. Ahora explicaste que en realidad esa salió primero, pero se publicó segunda. Oasis es una novela que gira con mucho menos personajes, gira alrededor de la mitología vikinga, las leyendas vikingas, el mundo vikingo, que es un mundo al que Brian Hodge, si bien no es que se focaliza por completo, vuelve a mencionar en otras historias. Mi pregunta es si hay algo en particular que le interesa sobre la mitología o el mundo o la parte histórica de los vikingos.
As you say, Oasis was your first in terms of writing novel, but your second published novel. Stand apart, Oasis, from your other novels, drawing deeply in the supernatural and the mythology of the Viking War, a setting you later revisit, if only in passing, excuse me, but the little dogs of my daughter. Okay, this Viking thing is a setting you later revisit, and if only in passing, or in other words, or is there something about the historical or mythic period to continues to exert a particular pull on your imagination?
Okay, what are you referring to? I'm blanking. What I would have revisited that in
the Viking stuff, the Norse mythology is clearly related to this Oasis novel.
Right.
And indeed, you go, you border this same topic across the board of all your work. What is the Fernando question is about that is something that appeals to you, the Norse myth, the historical period, the Viking culture, wherever.
I just generally find that period of history really interesting. I had read I guess it was pretty much a coffee table size book, good sized book by a Norse historian named Magnus Magnusson, and that was something that kind of lit my interest. And then I did this. So I'd read that before doing the novel even, and I did the novel, started it right out of shortly out of college. So I've said that the reason that these first two novels, the main characters are students, is because that's really about all I knew anything about being at the time, because I started these in my very early 20s. And yeah, just always that era of history, and the not just that, but the history in England as well too, with the Norman conquest and the Anglo-Saxon dominance, and then the Norman takeover. All of that's really interesting to me. So it was one of those things, one of those elements that actually came into Oasis later, after I had the characters and the kind of the things that they were dealing with in their own lives, and things going wrong as they're on this threshold of adulthood. So I was casting around for some sort of external threat to bring into that, and simply because of and settled on that because of the character's own background that I had given him, and I thought that would be an interesting aspect to have this blood feud carried on about 1,000 years later. It seemed the thing to do at the time. I don't know. Most anything that I have written before, I wouldn't write it now. I think that's a good thing, that you can look at things as being a snapshot of the time and place that they were written in and who you were at the time. But to leave them in the past and think that, yeah, this is not something I would do. It would not even occur to me to do today, but it did then.
Yes, but I couldn't agree more that it's a very, very deep environment, all the Norse mythology and the stories, the Danelaw, the conquer of the Anglo-Saxons, and so on. So yes, is very interesting, and always you can dig deeper and deeper, and always you find the goal of the Nibelungs, because they is still there, and you have, of course, you have to fight with the Fafnir, but anyway, is as the story goes, is really, really a lovely matter to write about. Next question, guys.
Nightlife was a novel. Nightlife fue publicada en castellano por Martínez Roca como Los Amos de la Noche, así que la gente la puede conseguir. It was translated into Spanish as Los Amos de la Noche. Nightlife was your first novel, and you mix horror and crime fiction to some point. You did the same thing with Prototype. And my question is, what from crime fictions appeals to you? What interests you from crime fiction when you mix it with horror, and now that you brought crime fiction?
Well, I like the way that both genres, horror and crime, have a lot of characters that just throw away laws and rules. So, um, the idea behind Nightlife came about in part because of I don't know if you surely you'd be aware of him. I don't know if you've interviewed him, David J. Scow.
Yes.
Uh, he around that time had a well, his debut novel under his own name, The Kill Riff, came out with Tor Books, and then he had a second novel called The Shaft. And I saw him in an interview refer to it as a Miami Vice horror novel.
Yes.
And I love that description. And so when I got the book, I didn't see the connection because it was set in Chicago during the winter, and nothing. I'm from Illinois, so nothing's farther from Miami than a Chicago winter. So I kind of felt free to use that description as a springboard because I liked the series Miami Vice too at the time, and thought in terms of otherworldly hallucinogens rather than the standard cocaine trade, and so just blended those two together. And I ended up feeling like it was because of the first two novels really had their influences seemed pretty obvious, and that third novel, the Nightlife, ended up seeming like it was the first one that was really all mine. Like I was really starting to chart my own path and get out from under my influences at that time.
Great.
Emiliano.
Nice.
Sí, sí, gracias, Fer. En su primera colección de relatos de Convulsion Factory, me encontré personalmente con relatos atravesados por la decadencia moral, la decadencia moral de la sociedad contemporánea de los años 90, ¿no? Esta es una colección de 1996. Y también me encontré con la deshumanización progresiva que tiene que ver con factores como la alienación. Aunque hablamos de 1996 y son relatos que abarcan, si no me equivoco, desde el 91 hasta el 96, la colección, a mi entender, se siente actual, por lo menos desde su temática. La pregunta sería, ¿estaban esos temas que mencioné en su radar al momento de escribir esos relatos?
Okay. Amy refers to your novel, The Convulsion Factory.
Collection. That was a
collection.
story collection.
Yes,
Story collection.
the collection, where many of your stories are stepping moral decay and progressive dehumanization, often linked to alienation. Although written in 1996, the collection feels absolutely contemporary. Were these concerns already central to your thinking at the time, or have they gained new resonance in hindsight?
Well, the first two collections I had were The Convulsion Factory, and another one called Falling Idols. And I had a bunch of stories that some of the very earliest ones I never wanted them collected because they just didn't. Yeah, I felt like I was learning how to write in public. But I had a bunch of stories that I thought were worth being collected, and they tended to fall into two camps. A lot of them, I think of them as stories out of an industrial period, because I was really interested in, still am, but maybe not quite as overwhelmingly as I was at the time. I was really interested in industrial music, like Skinny Puppy and Ministry, and just a lot of maybe more obscure things like Belt of Heads, if anybody remembers them. So I had those that felt like, and it was they would have gone with an industrial music soundtrack. The other ones were more religious / spiritual in nature. So I divided really the two of them up into what they felt like how they were thematically grouped. So the Convulsion Factory came about as this as a product of this of the stories that I did as focusing on decay, themes of decay. We'd be that urban decay, that would be the most obvious aesthetic, but physical and bodily decay, moral decay, emotional, spiritual decay. So it was all unified by these themes of decay, and that just happened to gather everything that I had at that point. And then the final story that I hit upon the idea of writing a novella that would incorporate all the themes from the foregoing stories. So that was how the final novella in that became to me a kind of a capstone for the whole collection. And then I did the same thing with Falling Idols.
Yeah.
Continuando un poco, perdón, ¿ibas a decir algo, Pablo?
No. Next question.
Continuando un poco con los temas que estamos trabajando y continuando un poco la pregunta de Emiliano, un tema que se repite mucho en la literatura de Brian Hodge es la definición del humano. En las historias de Brian Hodge, la definición del humano siempre parece estar relacionado con valores humanos. Hace una muy fuerte distinción en lo que hace a la gente. Gente es que mantengan los valores humanos. Lo monstruoso no es tanto por lo deformado o por criaturas arquetípicas, de hecho trabaja muy poco con vampiros, hombres lobos, etc., sino que lo verdaderamente monstruoso aparece por las personas amorales que simplemente no conectan con esos valores humanos. Entonces la pregunta sería, ¿cómo concibe él en su ficción lo monstruoso y lo malvado?
Following the topic we were discussed in the previous question, Fernando would like to stress that in your work often defines humanity in moral terms rather than biological terms. The monstrous is rarely a creature as such, but more often a moral human being, disconnected from empathy or responsibility. How do you personally conceive of evil or monstrosity within your fiction?
Well, I had the good fortune of coming out with my earliest works around the same time that Clive Barker did. And when he did, that was like seeing the bar being raised. And the thing that I thought was so striking about his work at that time was that it rarely, if ever, dealt with the monster, whatever form that takes, dealt with it as an external threat that had to be defeated and everything returns to normal. that arc story framework, I think, had been played out already. So it was interesting to see his work and how the aspirations kind of mirrored my own, as in going beyond this defeat the external influence. And so his stuff was more about the incorporation of the monster into oneself, or recognizing the monster within oneself. And however that ended up being manifested, it just seemed a whole lot more expansive a view, I thought. And so I really responded to that in his early work, like with from the Books of Blood and all. So, and I was just always interested in the idea of, or exploring the narratives of characters who are forced to make really hard moral choices. Sometimes they make the right ones, sometimes they make the wrong ones, but it was always an interesting thing to see play out the struggle in between these two polarities in any given individual.
Yes.
Emiliano.
Sí. La obra de Brian tiene por momentos situaciones o momentos, valga la redundancia, muy crudos o viscerales o duros, ¿no? Mi pregunta para Brian es, ¿cuál es, si es que tiene un proceso especial o particular como creador para transitar emocionalmente y escribir estas historias que tienen esas particularidades, ¿no? Pienso en la música, además lo podemos apreciar, ¿no? A su alrededor hay un montón de instrumentos, pero había comentado en alguna entrevista que quizás hace uso de la música para ayudarlo a escribir.
Emiliano refers that in your stories are sometimes points of raw or visceral questions. As a writer, how do you navigate these emotional and psychological extremes? Do you rely on particular rituals or stimuli, for instance, music, when working in such territory, or not?
I've always, well, as you can tell from the background here, I got a lot of interest, more than just a listener's interest in music. So I've often, going back pretty early, made things like mixtapes, well, that early on, playlists now that of stuff that I considered soundtracks that conjured up the feelings that I was after. But as far as navigating the emotional aspects of it, and how, early on, I navigated it very badly, because I thought of it as becoming kind of like living in the heads of these characters and not leaving it at the desk. It was a lot like you hear about people who get consumed by characters when they approach an acting job, as when their path into it is method acting, in which they don't leave the character. And so that was kind of the only way I knew to do it for the first several novels in the first many years. And that really took me to some unhealthy places. I wasn't processing these things well, and I would start to see things through the eyes of these characters that weren't role models, put it like that. So it was a good long time before I learned to to go in and come back out, and not carry it with me into family life or relations. Been with the same woman here for 40 years now, and that could be a challenge to her too early on, because of the moods that I would get in, and the how it would color my outlooks on everything. So it was definitely something that I had to learn how to deal with, and not let affect my everyday life as far as what I was dealing with on the page. So that was a path.
Mhm. Yeah, let me ask you something as a genre writer about this. Besides your answer that it doesn't affect your daily on daily basis uh, life, this kind of monster or amoral human beings and
Mm.
evil characters. Um, do you have, yeah, as a writer, I think you follow very close the emotion that the character is feeling
Mm.
across the novel as part of the arc of the character. And when the character uh, go deep in the mode of evilness, sometimes these emotions can, in some way, uh, move your soul according to the nature of the situation you are writing. Do you have any kind of um, way of cleanse some even hoochie coochie thing to cleanse your soul, your mind, your heart from when you after you go in deeper to the mud with your characters?
Getting out in nature is a great curative for just about anything. I'm fortunate enough to live here right up next to the front rank of the Rocky Mountains, and so there's all kinds of hiking territory around here. That's always good. Um, Good workouts. I'm avid about working out, and so that gets out. You can let go of a lot with a good sweat. So those are two good. Uh, they overlap, I guess, but yeah, I think those are probably two good tactics.
Great, and great advice
Hmm.
indeed. Okay, guys, next question.
Sí. En relación con estas preguntas, estas últimas dos preguntas, ¿cuánto influye el entorno o la realidad contemporánea en su proceso de escritura? Me pregunto si es permeable o más o menos permeable al contexto social al momento de escribir.
Um, in relation with this subject we are discussing, Emiliano would like to know how much does your immediate environment or contemporary social reality, more broadly speaking, permeate your writing process? Are you consciously receptive to social context, or does it seep into the work uninvited?
Um, I always start with characters and character conflicts and character perception. That just seems to be my inroad to just about anything. And I would not so much now, but there were a lot of times when I was doing short stories and taking short story invitations for commission pieces that would end up in this magazine or that anthology or something. Didn't have an idea, but I developed this approach that I called idea safari. Like you're going out hunting for an idea. And so I would set my intention to notice something that would be the inroad for a particular story. And it rarely, if ever, failed. I would go out with that intention, and then a lot of times I would go to the nearby city. I live in Boulder, Colorado, and I would go to Denver and just start wandering around and noticing things and maybe taking notes on things. And almost invariably, I would notice something would catch my attention, and then I would start. Like one time, it was just a cluster of maybe 4, 5, 6 balloons that were hanging in caught up in the branches of an oak near a church steeple, a cathedral steeple. And so I got captivated by that image. What's the story behind those balloons? And so so in that particular instance, I spent maybe after I looked at the balloons in front of that cathedral for a while, I spent maybe 10, 15 minutes walking to my favorite coffee house and got started. And I knew what it was, and what it led to. So it's for me, everything is a whole lot more intimate than broadly social concerns, because it always to me comes down to the individual characters. And if they're a part of some larger backdrop, so be it. If it's some sort of very narrowly focused family drama, so be it. It's almost like taking dictation. I do a whole lot less of steering things than a lot of writers seem to do, and I think of everything as taking on a life of its own and just telling me what it wants to be, what it needs to be, and what has to be uncovered to make it whole.
Good. Next question, guys.
Mi siguiente pregunta es sobre la visión teológica que Brian Hodge puede tener sobre el mundo. No es que sus novelas o sus cuentos giren exclusivamente acerca de a Christian theology, pero siempre parece estar como en el margen. Había preguntado anteriormente sobre los valores morales que hace que la gente sea humana, etcétera, etcétera, y me da la impresión de que hay una visión cristiana teológica siempre subterránea, siempre sutil en los márgenes de su historia. Por eso la pregunta básicamente es, dentro de su ficción o dentro de su mundo real, ¿cuál es su visión teológica del mundo? ¿En qué cree?
Fernando said that just talking about church and cathedrals, what is your personal theological view of the world? He asked that because it seems like Christian theology is quite central in your fiction, yet is often seems to linger quietly in the margins, shaping the moral atmosphere rather than the plot itself. Is that right, or is just a conception after reading your work?
That's a big topic. I one of the finest to me, one of the favorite compliments I ever got from reader email. It was after somebody, and it was from an odd source too, or what they were responding to, because several years ago, after the first Hellboy movie came out, I was hired to do a Hellboy novel, and did that, and I ended up hearing from somebody who thought very favorably about the religious aspects of it too, and told me that I wrote like a Catholic theologian. So that was a strangely wonderful compliment to me. That's always stuck in mind. Yeah, I grew up in Protestant home, Protestant church, and so I don't think, yeah, I don't think that ever escapes you, or the influence, because well, you remember what the Jesuits said: "Give us a boy until he's 5 years old, and we'll have him for life." So Catholics even talk about it being much more strict as far as the hold that Catholicism has on them. So I've always tended to. I don't know where I'm going with this. That's how you threw me. I should have asked how I could prepare for this, but
excuse me, Mr. Hodge. If you find the question too much personal, we can cancel the question.
Well, no, it's just that
we don't want to bother you. Was just another point that we try to remark about your work. But if you find the answer very, very personal and none of our business, of course, feel absolutely free not to answer.
No, it's a great question. It's just more, I feel incompetent in trying to answer it.
All right.
As far as the religious aspects of it, well, that I kind of shed that as far as once I got out of my teens, and that my viewpoints became a whole lot more egalitarian, and as has often been pointed out, there's often seems to be a great rift between any kind of monotheistic religion and nature. And then the philosophers that seem to see humanity as something apart from nature, and that always felt wrong to me. And in fact, there were a lot of early Christian theology spoke about nature in terms of just that it was a place of great evil. And so to me, if there was any kind of Christian theology running through it, it became more like from like the Celtic side of things that incorporated that natural aspect and didn't see that, to my understanding, didn't really impose that kind of dichotomy. But so I was more interested in weaving in all these pagan strands as well, things that were derived from those traditions. So it's I guess been a real stew pot of spiritual influences like that. But I never came at anything from a point of nihilism or atheism. I even though I find it useful sometimes to pretend as if, like with the cosmic horror, but personally, I don't come at it from that angle.
All right.
I hope I pulled it together there into something sensible.
Thank you for your open heart. Thank you. Next question, guys.
Sí. Pablo, me salteo una pregunta, paso a la siguiente.
Bueno,
Eh, Quisiera saber si Brian se coloca algún límite al momento de escribir alguna historia en particular. Eh, Pienso, por supuesto, por ejemplo, hablando de terror, en violencia gráfica, por ejemplo, o en el caso de la fantasía, límites del absurdo.
yes. Well, um, the question of Emmy goes around the limits and self-restraint. He would like to know if you do you impose limits on yourself when writing a particular story. He's thinking, for instance, in graphic violence or of excess, of absurdity, of fantasy. Where do you draw the line, if any, at all?
I don't really impose any kind of limits other than thinking of some element of extremity would just feel gratuitous if it's there for its own titillating sake. If that's the case, or I don't see what the point. If I were to remove it, any kind of element would the scene or the sequence lose its power? Would it weaken it? So I think that there's that phrase, with great power comes great responsibility, and I think with it's sort of applied to that, something that's I'll go as far as necessary as long as there's a justification for it. But to think in terms of, is there a line not to cross? Probably not, other than, do I feel like I could do justice to this idea or this topic or this baggage a character has? If I don't feel like if I can do justice to it, then maybe maybe then I would not approach it. But I don't believe in hard and fast limits. That it's just it's just more about my own capabilities and working to a certain standard.
Yeah.
All right. Next, guys.
La siguiente pregunta, mi penúltima pregunta, es sobre Prototype, una novela muy diferente a las que escribió Brian Hodge hasta ese momento y que básicamente gira alrededor de la idea bastante novedosa que está apareciendo ahora, que es una suerte de soft body horror, en donde la mutación ya no es exterior, sino que hay una mutación, un salto genético que produce una aberración en la naturaleza sin que eso implique que eso sea externo o visible. Entonces mi pregunta es, ¿cómo llegó a esta novela? ¿Cómo concibió? ¿Cómo llegó a la idea de esta novela de soft body horror? Y ya que estamos, ¿cuál es su opinión sobre el body horror?
Fernando is referring to your novel Prototype,
Mm.
that, according his point of view, is a kind of soft body horror
Mm.
where the mutation is subtle and revolves around evil, violence, and genetics, but
Mm.
it doesn't happen outside the human being, but inside. It's a very novel take of body horror. How did you come up with this novel? And what is your opinion about the body horror?
Well, I was always been a huge fan of David Cronenberg. So I would consider him a really a formative influence. I think, well, this might be one of the ones where there was more conscious adoption or exploration of things that I perceived culturally. Because you had a lot of, in the run up to the years 2000, you had a lot of millennial anxiety and millennium anxiety. So I think I was probably tapping into that, but I was interested in the themes of alienation and what if it was becoming a coping mechanism? What if this genetic mutation was a coping mechanism for an age of alienation, to where a person wouldn't be particularly bothered by it, and so in one sense that was what started it, moving it forward. It was also something else that I really dove into those things that I mentioned earlier, the industrial aesthetics of it that just saturated it. So there was that, and I view all those four novels that I did with Bantam Doubleday Dell. I viewed all of them as going deeper each time, just to kind of root out things in myself. And so that one seemed to close the process. I really felt a strange cleansing in doing that particular novel and bringing it to a close and the way it ended.
All right. Next, guys.
Nuestra última pregunta, your last question, y agradeciéndole muchísimo el tiempo a Brian Hodge, es acerca de su novela corta, excelente novela corta, I Will Bring You the Birds from Out of the Sky. Es una muy hermosa novela, very, very beautiful short novel, en donde Brian retoma el horror de Lovecraft, pero siempre desde la sutileza. Hay horror cósmico, pero filtrado a través de la sutileza de Brian Hodge. Mi pregunta es, y con esto cerramos, es cómo filtra el horror cósmico de Lovecraft con una sensibilidad como la que tiene Brian Hodge, tan firmemente anclada en lo humano.
Perdón, una cosita para agregar, Fer.
Sí.
Simplemente no es necesario ser traducida. Que en su último libro, que es posiblemente su última colección de relatos que se publicó en 2025, también vuelve sobre el universo Lovecraftiano con un relato. Es interesante agregarlo a tu pregunta.
Sí, de hecho vuelve en algunas ocasiones a Lovecraft. Esta es una novela centrada en Lovecraft. Lo interesante es, bueno, cómo se filtra Lovecraft y su horror cósmico en Brian Hodge, tan centrado tan anclado en lo humano.
All right. According to Fer, one of your finest stories, I Bring You the Birds from Out of the Sky, revisited Lovecraftian cosmic horror, yet always through your own distinctive subtlety. How do you filter Lovecraft buzz in different cosmos through a sensibility so firmly anchored in the human and the intimate that is present all across your work?
That was something that I felt like I had to work up to over a lot of years, because I was always very character focused, and but it was quite a few years before I started started doing anything of a cosmic horror nature, because I don't know, it's just the two seem to be too far apart, in that you've got the intimate family or personal things, and then these expansive concepts. And um, I don't know. I just felt after a certain point that I was able to kind of instinctively bridge that the intimate drama and personalities with by remaining focused on them as all these external influences or impacts or discoveries. And in the case of I'll Bring You the Birds from Out of the Sky, it was really more of a discovery kind of thing. Um, so I was with that, and with that one in particular, I was interested in having in the background this cache of art, of folk art. That was
Yes.
an early an early concept behind that, because I really wanted to explore the almost like the family scar of this person who lives in a rural area and is struggling to capture in paintings things that are too big for him to really that exceed his talents, really. And so the book, the original little hardcover book, I wanted folk art plates into that. I don't know if you've just read the ebook, or if you've seen the hardcover, but um, so that was an idea that I really wanted to do really early on, is to bring folk art into the finished book. And another one that I think that I had another long form interview Monday of this week, and the one thing that the interviewer focused on really toward the end was well, it's the concluding story in the new collection. It's called On These Blackened Shores of Time, in which there's a family tragedy that's tens of millions of years in the making. And so I just think of it in terms of maintaining your humanity and maintaining your moral center, even as you're confronted with these overpowering forces. I think that was probably how I started figuring out how to bring these two things together.
Okay. I can help myself when Lovecraft is on the table.
Yeah.
I know you.
I consider myself some kind of humble novice of
Mm,
the Lovecraft circle or something like that. That just, I got plenty of questions about these two last compilations of yours, where this
mm,
Lovecraft uh, mythos is more
mm.
present than ever. But
Right.
let me just point one thing. In several of your stories, the cosmos feels less hostile
Mm.
than indifferent.
Hmm.
Is indifference for you a greater source of terror than malevolence?
Depends on the day you ask me. Um, I going back to the one I mentioned, On These Blackened Shores of Time, the backdrop of that is tens of millions of years in the making, entities who are never identified, never named, whose influence is only present in what they left behind. But they cared about worlds. They didn't care about inhabitants. The final line is, it took an inhabitant to care about mercy. And so that, yeah, I've looked at it both ways. I've found value in exploring it both ways, as far as which is more threatening to me. Probably indifference. If they're malevolence, even though it may be arrayed against you, it means you still matter. Anything that has a malevolent attitude toward you matter to that thing. Indifference, no, you're beneath notice. So that might be ultimately it's there's less action implied in that, but that's probably a scarier concept, that you don't, because if you don't merit malice, you don't merit saving either.
Indeed. Thank you very much. It's
Thank
very
you.
enlightening for me.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you. Okay, guys.
Se me ocurrieron 3 preguntas mientras hablaba, pero ya dijimos que es la última. Una sola pregunta te pido, Pablo, muy corta. Quería saber si Charles Beaumont fue una influencia en su carrera, porque me pareció notarlo, pero quizás es una idea equivocada.
Although we promised that was the last question, Fer got an idea that if Charles
Beaumont was
Charles
an
Beaumont
influence in your writing. At least I noticed that.
Is a influence in your work, or not, or just is
My mistake.
a perception of Fernando?
Not direct, maybe secondhand, because he wasn't he involved with the Twilight Zone?
Yes.
I thought, yeah, that he was. So yeah, that was something that. What was the last thing?
In manuscripts or Twilight Zone, it wrote the scripts.
Yeah, so I would have encountered his work as a child in that form, but as far as any kind of direct writings, there may have been some sort of secondary influence in editors and writers that were influential to me early on. I would be hard pressed to claim any direct kinship there, though.
All right.
Pablo, entonces, para cerrar y agradecerle el tiempo a Brian Hodge, la pregunta con la que cerramos siempre, que es, ¿en qué está trabajando ahora?
We used to close our interviews with the same question for all our guests.
Yeah.
And the question is, what are you up to, if you can share with us?
Okay, well, I'm putting the finishing touches on two musical works, an EP and an album. Both in a couple of tracks on the album, I used a speech synthesis software to put the words of Lovecraft in the voice of Aleister Crowley.
Oh, dear Lord. I want that, please.
Okay. Well, maybe I can write those 2 tracks to you. They would be mixes; they're not masters. But yeah, I can do that. So yeah, I've got the about this 90 minutes of music, I guess, that have been divided up this way, that I'm going to be putting out on Bandcamp. Something always gets in the way of doing this one thing. creating a self-publishing entity to reissue some of these things that came back to me that have disappeared from the market. I'm working on a several hundred pages into a novel that's I think of it as more fantasy than anything that you would know me for. But that's where my interests are right now. So with all these different things, and time management is my friend. So
Good for you. Good for you. Okay.
Pablo, mandale entonces nuestro agradecimiento. Brian, we really appreciate your time, your consideration, and your openness to talk with us.
Oh, I'm glad to do it.
Besides your generosity, your open heart answers, and of course, all your wisdom and knowledge about the genre and the craft of the emotion behind the genre. Because in all, if you can, one can resume all your work, I could say that you are always working with emotion behind the character. So
I don't know any other way, really.
yes, that's my own humble opinion. You always is pushing the character beyond anything and much more, and the character has to, scratch in the emotions to be brave and face the things that are haunting or whatever. So once again, it was really a honor, really a great pleasure and a great occasion of learning from one of the most very important voices right now of the genre
Thank you.
nowadays. So, Mr. Hodge, on behalf of my colleagues Fernando and Emiliano and the whole group of Grite, thank you very much indeed. And till any moment, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad we could, after our 2 postponements, I'm glad we could finally lock it in. Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye, sir.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye and thanks.